I'm celebrating the fact that I'm the daughter of two Black power people.
Right.
I am, you know what I mean? Like, I grew up with the fist up in the air. Like, that's how my dad is. That's how my mom is. Like, that's what it is, you know?
Right.
So I'm just basically paying that forward right now. I'm paying that Black power lineage that I was born into forward. And so this is a little different because now I get to say, I'm going to talk about Reconstruction, and wow, this is really horrible. This is really just, you know, and for me, the most difficult part, the second chapter I'm writing about is entitled Southern Landscape. And this is Tali Beatty's first like complete work. He works on it for 2 years. It keeps like having different incarnations, but it is actually set and it's done by 1949. And so I'm thinking about the time that in which he was developing this work. So this would have been the desegregation of the military. This would have been Jackie Robinson, right before Jackie Robinson becomes the first Black player in Major League Baseball. Right. There's this first freedom ride, not the freedom ride in the 60s. There's a Bayard Rustin freedom ride in 1947 after a Supreme Court decision that says you cannot segregate people on interstate transit. Right. So there's all of these, there's this movement towards a civil rights movement in the late 40s when he's creating this work, right? Up against writing about or him choreographing something about the Reconstruction era. For me, what's even more cathartic is looking at the Reconstruction era, looking at the time in which Beatty creates this work, and then looking at the time now. And that's when I get, that's when it's very upsetting for me. And to be clear, I'm not going to go completely pessimistic because there's a lot of things that have changed. The fact that I'm even doing this research is actual proof that a lot of things have changed, right? My story is a very a non-traditional story in terms of getting into academia. You know, I did not have an undergraduate degree and I went right into a master's program. Yes, folks, you can do it. It happens. Yeah. So, and that's not because I'm some sort of baby genius. It's, you can do it though. So there's again, reimagining how does the system work for the certain people? Oh, is that how the system's working? How's the system gonna work for me? I've been dancing 30 years. Everybody you talking about dance-wise, if it's in a Black sphere, most of those people I've worked with, or I've worked with the people that work with them. I can tell you what they said. I can tell you what they smelled like. Okay, so
here's the receipts.
Exactly, right? And so academia, if you have a lot of experience, they want people there who can actually, who have actual proof beyond the theorizing, who can actually say, oh yeah, that person, they did this. And they said that, you know.
Absolutely, because it's like, listen, if academia is not your space or you're curious about academic space, just because people are teaching about a certain subject or claiming mastery in a certain subject don't necessarily mean they have professionally engaged and immersed themselves within the field of that subject. It is not necessarily, but they don't go hand in hand, which I think is unfortunate. But the way in which that blew my mind at first, where I'm like, oh, a hip hop dance conference in an academic institution. I can't wait. We're going to be dancing. We're going to be jamming. And then I get there and we're talking about the thing much more than we're doing the thing. I'm like, whoa, dissonance. So yeah, it's like the value of the people who are immersed in the thing. Doing the thing.
It's and I don't want to like take anything away from anyone who is like critically thinking about these things and for whatever reason haven't done it, because to be a professional dancer, to be someone who receives contracts to do the thing year after year after year, that is rare air. I didn't realize that at the time. That is rare air. When they ask you to come back year after year and you say you want to leave and they say, oh, well, that's really unfortunate. We're sad to see you go. If you change your mind, you can stay. That's really rare air, you know, so everybody's not able to do that. There's not enough funds to hire everybody. And there's actually some people who are really good at it who never get to that point, you know. So to be able to dance with a company to be able to dance on Broadway or to do these things. That is a very specific, small minority of dancers, right? So maybe we do go into academia to talk about it. That's fine. But what we also have to make space for is the embodying of the thing, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes when there's not enough of the embodying of it, the viewpoint or the perspective becomes very narrow. And I think, for me at least, it reeks of a certain type of colonialist scientification of everything that I'm not with. This like categorization and this like vestige of like the Enlightenment period of like putting everything into a category and finding its phyla and finding its, you know, and that's all fine and well, but can we just get on the floor and do a coffee grinder? Can we just like feel with that, even if you're not good at it, because it's going to give you some type of information? Can we just get on the floor and try it? But to like not have on any dance clothes at all and just be up there just talking about it. Even if I give like a talk about Beatty, at some point I'm going to get up and demonstrate. Because to me, to see it in front of you as the conversation is taking place just gives it even more legibility.
Absolutely. Another layer of information. And I appreciate you bringing up the pros of that critical thinking too, because it's like they marry each other. They're yin and yang with one another.
Yeah.
It's when one decides to go so far into one or so far into the other without giving the other side its due, where I think things get a little wonky for me. And so, that process and the interweaving of the duality is where the gems are for myself. And I'm curious about, because we've been talking about so many beautiful, amazing things, and like this concept of interweaving between the critical theory and the embodiment of, and the Afro-Pessimism and the Afro-Futurism. And what I want to contextualize some of the things that we've been talking about into something that you talked about with good dance. And speaking choreographically here, I'm curious about, for choreographers, what have you grabbed as far as like the process from researching Beatty's work to being in, performing, creating, collaborating, and coaching Camille's work? Like, what do you see are some of the patterns of that interweaving that creates good dance to you?
Okay, so I'm gonna make this real simple, because to me it is really simple. It's got to make sense. And people, what I do not like, and I'm not saying it has to be tied up in a nice neat bow. That's different. It doesn't have to be resolved, but narratively and dramaturgically, you need to be making sense. And if that's not what your goal is, you need to be clear that you're not trying to make sense. But to be kind of going in and out and blurring the picture, I don't enjoy any dance of any sort that is not where I'm wondering if there's been enough deep thinking about what's going on. Unless it's like some sort of improv. And when I say improv, I'm not talking about like contact improv, and I'm not talking about that, because that's not what I do really. I'm talking about a cipher. I'm talking about a block party. I'm talking about a picnic. I'm talking about my grandmother's house in the 80s, where everybody in my family was up dancing around the Marvin Gaye. That's what I'm talking about. Now, if that's just an impromptu, everyone's getting up and dancing and we're all just having, no, of course it doesn't need to have it doesn't have to be thoughtful. But whatever it is someone is creating, and the reason I'm saying it has to make sense is because if it doesn't make sense, it's not legible to your audience. So anytime I'm creating something, and the type of work that I do is a hybrid between concert dance and performance art, I'm not doing anything, and I mean anything. You know, I've said this in rehearsal. I'm not moving my head a certain way if it doesn't make sense to the story I'm telling. Why am I moving my head like that? Why is my hand like this? Because it's a misdirection to the audience. And the goal is to bring them on the journey with you, unless you are very clear that that is not what you were trying to do.
Right.
Then that's something else. But there's a way to make that very clear. So it needs to make sense. And I'm speaking about this very passionately because I'm very limited on time. And I do not like getting a ticket to go to the theater and sitting down and going, what is happening here? Yeah. What is going on? I can be at home writing. This is no.
Right.
And I also don't like seeing dancers being abused that way. Because to me, to have people dancing very hard, to have them in tons of rehearsals, to have them trying to follow your dream when your dream is unclear and your story is unclear, and you're wearing their bodies out and you're taking time away from their dance career, which is not very long, is to be disingenuous and to be selfish. That is why I'm speaking very passionately about this. Yes, it needs to make sense. Don't waste their time. Don't waste your time. Don't waste the audience time.